You don't know it, but while you sleep, they scurry across your body, their tiny legs tickling your skin as they search for food or shelter. Bugs find their way everywhere, and you can bet while you're peacefully enjoying your slumber, your body is nothing but another obstacle for them to climb upon. And climb upon they do. Grossed out yet? Well, we're just preparing you for this unsettling episode we have in store for you. We're going full creepy crawly on these 3 hair-raising tales of insect interactions. Dying from an Egyptian curse, being covered in spiders, and eating a sandwich full of bees. It's time for you to decide what's fact or fiction.
The line that divides the factual from the unreal has long since blurred. The tales we once thought fantastical, now implanted as true. To decipher verity from the imagined, you must break from the ordinary and consider a universe where the outlandish prevails. Can you expand your mind to see beyond our perceived reality? Can you decide what's fact or fiction?
Are you cautious as to what you put into your mouth? Andrea Upchurch enjoyed a good meal as much as the next person, but she was also a very picky eater. Well, she had to be picky, being allergic to so many different things. During a peaceful lunch in the park one day, she discovered she had yet another allergy.
It was simply something that Andrea needed. A quiet lunch away from the office in the serenity of her favorite park. She didn't do it often, but this stressful day, she opted for a longer lunch, hoping to enjoy the quiet and temperate weather of spring. She only planned to spend a small sliver of her 2-hour lunch break to actually eat, and the rest meandering around the greenery, admiring the local wildlife. Her lunch option that day was light and, as always, fit within the diet she had to stick to. Being allergic to gluten, nuts, most seafood, egg, dairy, and a host of other foods, most of her meals required a lot of planning. Today, it was a simple cucumber salad. She took bite after bite, enjoying the warm air against her skin. The day's nonsense started to melt away as she grew accustomed to the beauty of nature. In the distance, a small dog barked as it chased a wandering frisbee, but that was the extent of any distractions that day. That was, of course, until Andrea let out a screeching yelp. After a bite of salad, something sharp seemed to pierce the inside of her throat. It was a noticeable pain that lingered as if the foreign object had been in her salad and cut the inside of her esophagus. She took 2 large drinks from her water bottle before it finally dislodged. Before she could make sense of what she swallowed, she could feel her throat closing up and her mouth swelling. Before panic set in, Andrea was confused as to what she was reacting to. She had carefully made her salad and was sure to include her usual assortment of ingredients. As her breathing grew shallow, she had a fleeting thought that someone at the office slipped something in. Andrea tried to dial 911, but in her panic, she only fumbled with the buttons. Her head grew light, and the world started to spin, and just as she was about to black out, she felt a firm grip on her shoulder. When she woke, she wasn't met by the beauty of the sun, but by a bright fluorescent light shining above her. A nurse was at her side, fiddling with whatever medical equipment she had been hooked up to. The hour that passed, Andrea attempted to piece together what happened with the doctor and nurses. During their conversation, she learned of her savior, the man with the dog, who saw her struggling and called 911. The doctor also advised her of the very strange way she came to find she was also allergic to bees by swallowing one.
Well, that was unbelievable. More so for Andrea, of course. Do you think she could have swallowed a bee without realizing it? It could have snuck into her salad, but, and I shudder to even say this out loud, wouldn't she have chewed it up or even felt it in her mouth? While you mull over this story, let us know what you think in the comments section, and vote now using the on-screen poll. Now, put Andrea in the back of your mind for a moment, because it's time to introduce you to Jack Vanis, an eclectic man if ever there was one. Jack mostly kept to himself and was passionate about aquariums full of different wildlife. He even owned a personal pet shop. But as he would find, these pets were better off in the wild.
His parents had always hated his obsession with exotic insects, but when he moved out, Jack was quick to start his collection. He never intended it to get as large as it did, but over the years, he amassed quite the collection of lizards, insects, and eight-legged creatures. To the very few people that ever entered his home, it was a veritable horror show. For Jack, it was a soothing escape from the dullards he was forced to work with. On that particular day, he needed their company the most. He felt he had a connection to all of them, but one fascinated him the most, a black widow that was fairly new to his collection. As much as he loved to feel his snakes coiling around his body or the rough skin of his bearded dragon under his fingers, he thought the tickling of the widow's legs was especially comforting. He was still growing accustomed to the widow, so he stuck his hand in her container slowly. She was especially active that day and moved from the floor to his finger rather quickly. He too moved quickly to follow her motions and didn't lose sight of her as she sped up his knuckle, across his palm, and to his wrist. She seemed to stop dead in her tracks to contemplate the little bump at the center of his wrist. Jack watched her and admired the smooth black husk and the red marking. He was fascinated by her. But his trance was broken by the ring of his phone. As the ringing cut the dead silence where he kept his collection, he jerked his hand, startled, causing the widow to strike. The bite wasn't immediately painful, just a light burning that, over the seconds that followed, seemed to grow worse. The spider had fallen from his wrist and scurried away, but Jack was too busy looking at the growing red spot on his body. He hadn't researched black widow bites much, but he recalled reading how they weren't fatal. So he tended to the wound and tried to ignore the throbbing pain that radiated from it. In the minutes that followed, the pain intensified, but Jack still referred back to the article he had read. He tried to distract himself with some of his other living collectibles. He let his snake coil around his arm and a gecko climb up the back of his neck. Nothing could distract him, though. Jack started to lose track of himself. As the pain worsened, it coursed further up his arm, and as it reached near his chest, he started to move absent-mindedly. His mind was in a haze, his thoughts clouded and unclear. He grew delirious and started to open every cage around him, letting out his amassed collection of oddities. Then, as the pain hit his chest, he came to realize that, just maybe, he had misread that article. Maybe it was that black widow bites were rarely deadly. It was a fleeting thought as he slumped over the sofa, his hand clenching from the intense pain near his heart. That, at least, is one version of the death of Jack Vanis that goes around. There was no real indication of what happened in his final moments as his body succumbed to the black widow bite. All the reports could say for sure is that when the police arrived after responding to complaints of an unpleasant odor, they found Jack covered in webbing, his body partially devoured by the exotic collection of insects, spiders, and lizards that were set loose.
This sounds like a tale fit for a horror story. Do you think Jack's own zoo of insects and lizards would turn him into a feast? Black widow spiders aren't known for being deadly to humans, but a reaction could have wound up killing him. Are we tangling you in a web of falsities? Or did this story really happen? Vote now using the on-screen poll and prepare yourself for our third tragic story of Gregory George, a man whose own lust for exploration led to his untimely demise. An archaeologist with a thirst for the unknown, Gregory uncovered a prized possession only to have his joy unexpectedly ripped away from him.
The year was 1881, and the place was the Valley of the Kings in the East Valley of Thebes. Gregory George's expedition had been hard at work in the desert sun, struggling against the loose sand that continued to blow into their faces. Even Gregory, a man of optimism, was growing weary that they'd find anything. Though hope was starting to dwindle and the desire to continue fighting the heat and the elements waned, the excited cries of one of George's workers brought life back to the expedition. It was the tomb of Ramesses II, pharaoh of Egypt, successor of Seti I. During the 19th dynasty, Ramesses II, or Ozymandias to the Greeks, ruled over Egypt and reasserted control over Canaan. He fought sea pirates, bartered with the Hittites, and marched into Libya. The discovery of his tomb would do wonders for George's career. Unfortunately, his excitement would be short-lived. They called it the Curse of Ramesses. After his discovery, Gregory George earned world fame. As far as Egyptologists go, he struck gold and would be able to ride this until his retirement. While he hoped to fully enjoy the fame that his find gave him, in the weeks after the discovery, he started to grow ill. Within a month, his body was weak and was barely able to return to the site of the tomb. His discovery awaited his return, and he was anxious to get back to the Valley of the Kings to further explore his career-defining tomb. His illness forced him to remain in Cairo, however, some 393 miles from Ramesses II's tomb. Gregory frustratingly waited for his health to improve so he could return to his discovery, but 2 months after the excitement started, he met his demise. The legacy of Gregory was intertwined with Ramesses II's tomb forever, with some believing he fell victim to a curse put upon the crypt. Medical professionals had a reason more rooted in logic and science. Gregory had been bitten by a mosquito, and while shaving one day, broke the skin and spread the infection of erysipelas.
Was it really an infection caused by a mosquito that killed him? Or was Gregory and his team cursed by the tomb? It all seems very coincidental, no? Well then, maybe this is just a fabrication of our imaginations. Are you starting to itch from all these stories about bugs? Worry not. It's time for the moment you've been waiting for, the reveal.
Are you ready to find out if you can decipher between fact or fiction? Let's look back at tonight's 3 stories and find out which were born from reality and which were fabrications of the imagination.
We started this segment with the story of Andrea Upchurch and the deadly sandwich. It's a gross way to find out you're allergic to bees. But did it actually happen? Well, there have been cases of people accidentally swallowing bees. The exact events in our story were not cited from any articles and are entirely fictional. The story of Jack Vanis is a horrific one, so appalling that it must have been conceived by a demented mind. Though we'd love to take credit for it, we happened upon this story a while back while scouring the internet. The unfortunate man in question was Mark Vogel, and the name is pretty much all that was changed. He did allegedly die from a black widow bite and was found partially consumed by his exotic collection. There was no report as to the Dortmund, Germany resident's final moments, but he was found covered in more than 200 spiders, a collection of snakes, and even thousands of termites. Finally, we have Gregory George, archaeologist, Egyptologist, and an unfortunate casualty of strange circumstances. Did he succumb to the curse of Ramesses II? Not quite. But this story is based on true events. The man this story is based on is George Herbert, 5th Earl of Carnarvon. When he did die shortly after opening an Egyptian tomb, it was that of Tutankhamun, his death was believed to have started with blood poisoning caused by shaving a mosquito bite that was infected by erysipelas, a skin bacteria.
How well did you do in tonight's video? Did you look past the deception of our world and define the off-blurred line that struggles to separate lies from the truth? Let us know in the comment section below. And should you find the urge to test your perceptions again, be sure to subscribe and join us next time when we ask you to decide what's fact or fiction.